everybody, welcome back. So today I'm going to do a review of the Arc of the Scythe series by Neal Shusterman. And to go along with my review, I've made s'mores. Because summer's coming, and I like s'mores. And the scythes in this series can basically have whatever they want. So this is just what I wanted right now. So the Arc of the Scythe series has 3 books in it. The first one is called Scythe. The second one is called Thunderhead, and that one's being lent out to somebody else right now. And the third one is The Toll. This is a science fiction young adult series where humanity's problems have basically been solved. There was a benevolent artificial intelligence called the Thunderhead who saw all of human knowledge and took it all into account and basically use it to solve all the world's problems so that nobody goes hungry, nobody is poor. People basically have whatever they want or whatever they need. And this kind of opens up the world to, because all of our basic needs are met, then humanity can kind of do whatever it wants. So we follow 2 main characters in the series, Scythe and Rowan. And these 2 young people are invited to be part of the Scythes. And the Scythes are the people who are in charge of making sure that the world does not get overpopulated. The only way that you can die in this world is if you are killed by a scythe, or if you're burned or eaten away by acid, or if your body's destroyed in a way that there's no way to build it back together. So the Thunderhead gave the Scythedom this ability and will not interfere in Scythe affairs. So overall, I had a lot of fun with this series. It did leave some questions, and I think that there was some things that were hard to kind of get through because maybe it didn't go far enough. Or, if it hadn't been a young adult novel, it could have been a little bit more in depth about certain aspects of humanity. So the things that I liked about it, it was a great story. And I even liked the characters. They were, for the most part, pretty well developed. You kind of understood why they did the things they did, and when they become scythes, why they choose to be the type of scythe that they are. So overall, I thought the world was really interesting, and that it was based off a really interesting idea that what would happen if suddenly we didn't have all the problems that we have now, and that there was someone or something in charge that kind of made sure that humanity didn't have to suffer. Now, of course, because we're all human and we know that people suffer, there is, of course, suffering in this world. And you see that a lot in the second book. The first book kind of made it out to be this utopia, with this one exception that we have these group of people who have to control the population by making sure that we don't get more people than the earth can handle, and they have to kill people. In the second book, you start to see the holes in it, and how kind of the Thunderhead works, and how he has set up the world to kind of be accommodating for every type of person that there is. And I thought it did a good job of looking at what it would do to somebody if you had to be the person that killed people. What would that do to you? What kind of person would that make you into? The Scythes were obviously the most developed characters. They were the ones that we knew the most about, and the ones that we had to try to understand why they were doing the things that they were doing because of the type of person that they were. And obviously it's interesting that the Thunderhead obviously had some kind of agreement with the Scythes that this would be their job, and that the Thunderhead would not interfere, and the Thunderhead stuck to that. However, obviously people who ran the Scythedom didn't fall in line with the things that the Thunderhead had apparently agreed upon. And so I would say there's plenty of conflict, there's plenty of problems and things that need to be solved, and that even though this is supposed to be a utopia, there are still miserable people and there's still horrible things going on, and that the world is not a perfect place. Also, the main romance, I didn't find it that annoying. I know I've heard people say that it looked like it was an afterthought, and I was kind of okay. I was actually okay with that, because in YA novels, it's kind of one of my pet peeves that there's kind of romance heavy. So the things that I didn't like. Overall, it was pretty predictable. There were a lot of things that happened. I was like, well, I figured that out already. And, sometimes I like to have a little intrigue in my books to know, like, not have everything figured out. But let's say it was predictable. It was a young adult novel, so obviously the clues to what's going on are blatantly obvious right in front of you. And I also found that, when reading, like, things through the view of the Thunderhead, I got to wondering, like, is this artificial intelligence really benevolent? Does it never make mistakes? And it kept kind of stating, like, oh, I never make mistakes. People make mistakes, but I don't make mistakes. And in a lot of ways, you could see that the Thunderhead was trying to protect humanity without really understanding what it was like to be human. But of course, to be human would make it so that it couldn't be the benevolent AI that tried to take care of everyone. So you have this conflict going on within the AI itself. Because it's the other thing that I struggled with, because this was a YA novel, obviously there were things that could have been done much more in depth. Don't get me wrong, it was plenty bloody, but we could have got a little bit more into how characters were feeling, how situations were affecting them, and that we're not necessarily so one-sided or one-focused, and that the complexities of people it didn't quite grasp, which is okay, but it's just one of those things that's kind of minor for me. They could have done a little bit better. There were also a lot of things about society and a lot of the problems that you can tell from just watching the news that didn't really get addressed. The main one that I picked out of there was addiction, because I work with addiction. And how do we handle addiction in this world? Are there people who still have addictions and use drugs and everything, but didn't even talk about that kind of stuff? And, supposedly it touched a little bit on racism, that now all the races are kind of combined, and so there's not really racism, except that there is on some level. You kind of find that out in the third book, that as the Scythe is starting to make more stringent rules or loosen up some of the rules that it was supposed to be controlled under. It looked a little bit about depression, but not a whole lot. As in, people did get depressed, and when they got depressed, their nanites just gave them whatever antidepressant that they needed to help boost their mood, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, because sometimes what was going on was more overwhelming than the nanites could handle. But it did not really look at mental illness, and we don't have a cure for everything. So did they find a cure for schizophrenia? Was there a cure for mental and physical disabilities? And it didn't really address that at all. And how would the world respond to those types of difficulties? Yeah, there were just some things like that I felt like it didn't address very well, and so I didn't know how that would look in that world. And I get it, it was focused on a story, it was focused on how these Scythe trainings become Scythes, and then what happens in the aftermath, and how humanity reacts to things that happen, and how the Thunderhead reacts to events that happened. So overall, I really enjoyed the series. The ending was not my favorite thing. It wasn't horrible, it was just okay. It didn't ruin the series for me, but I thought that the end could have used a little bit more, or a little something more. But overall, I would say it's mildly annoying that I just didn't like how it all wrapped up. So, but I don't know that I could say a better way to wrap it up. So those are my thoughts on the Arc of the Scythe series. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you want to read the books, I would certainly recommend them. They're a lot of fun to read. And I post new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now, I'm going to have a s'more.